It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. Dr. Tiziana Ulian is a senior research leader at the Royal Botanical Garden in Kew. She holds a PhD in natural resources from the University of Greenwich in the UK, and her background is in plant ecology with over 20 years of experience in designing, implementing, and leading projects related to plant conservation and sustainable use across Latin America, Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, with a total of 32 projects in 18 countries. Tiziana has over 100 publications, scientific and technical, including the global review, Unlocking Plant Resources to Support Food Security and Promote Sustainable Agriculture, which contributed to the last Kew's State of the World's Plants and Fungi 2020 report. She is also the lead editor and co-author of the book Wild Plants for a Sustainable Future, which aims to promote the conservation and sustainable use of wild multi-purpose species in agriculture and forestry projects. The title of her talk today is Unlocking Plant Resources for a Sustainable Future, From Conservation to Use. Welcome, Tiziana.
Thank you very much, Yanni, and it's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for the invitation. So it's a real pleasure to share something about our work that has been carried out over the last 20 years as a Kew with colleagues. So I would start my presentation first to give you a bit of flavor of what Kew Garden is, and then I will go into the details about our work and the content of my presentation. First, I would like to say that this is a presentation, a joint presentation together with my colleagues, Dr. Mareva Janella, and also with Dr. Udi Liu, that they also contributed to this presentation. So about Kew, let me see. Yes. So if you don't know Kew Gardens is famous mainly for its beautiful gardens. And here you can see the part of the gardens and the temperate house. It's a big garden located in the southwest of London, with 130 hectares, containing 14,000 trees from the temperate world. But also we are a global research institute, and we are more than 400 scientists working at Kew. And our work is very much linked to the collections. In fact, we have a huge a wide range of collections. So we have the herbarium that probably a lot of you might know, with the 8.5 million herbarium specimens. We have a fungarium, but we also have DNA samples. We have a bank with microscope slides for plant tissue. We have 70,000 species in cultivation at Kew. We have a wide range of books, 300,000, and also an important economic botany collection with over 100,000 art crafts. And we also have a seed bank, and this is really what this presentation is going to be today. And we do all this work together with many collaborators from around the world. We are working with over 100 countries and 400 collaborators. And so our work very much depends on these collaborations. And I'm based at the Millennium Seed Bank. So this is the Millennium Seed Bank. It's located in West Sussex, in the southeast of England. This is located at Wakehurst. So these are the gardens of Wakehurst. And this is the hub of the Millennium Seed Bank Partnership that formerly was called the project. And she's Francis, one of my colleagues, and while she's storing one of our precious collections. Collections here are from all over the world. We have about 40,000 species, mainly wild species that are conserved here in the Millennium Seed Bank. And there are 2.4 billion seeds from these species, which correspond to around 12% of the world flora. So now let's go to the core of the presentation, and I'm going to talk to you about mainly two areas of our work. One is about the targeting and documenting useful plants, in particularly food plants. And second, I'm going to share with you some examples of projects where our seed conservation efforts, they're linked very much to the use of the collection to support local communities in some cases, but also to tackle other global challenges. And in terms of targeting and documenting useful plants, we published a couple of years ago the checklist of useful plants that you can see here on the right side of my slide. And basically, in this publication, we compile information from 13 large data sets. We use the economic botany data standards categorization, and we divided them, for example, in food plants, medicinal plants, and also material plants, and so on. And one of the publications that was derived from this was the one that Yanni mentioned earlier, that was published as part of the State of the World Plants and Fungi report that came up in 2020 about unlocking plant resources to support food security and promote sustainable agriculture. And this was done together with a lot of colleagues internally at Kew, but also externally, colleagues from the FAO and also from the Alliance as well. Basically, I said that our work is linked to the work that we do at the Millennium Seed Bank. So we looked at how many of these species are conserved in the Millennium Seed Bank. And I'm referring here to a recent publication that came up a few months ago, where we look at the Millennium Seed Bank collection versus the checklist of useful plant species that we compiled in the earlier publication. As you can see here in the map on the left, you have the distribution of our Millennium Seed Bank collection based on useful plants. Some countries like America and Mexico, US, Mexico, several countries in Africa, Europe, in Asia, we have China and also Australia. These are really where we have the highest number of useful plants conserved in our collection at the Millennium Seed Bank. And you can see more details in the table, in the second table on the right, where we are really showing where all the collection are mainly from. Of the 40,000 useful plants that we compile, we found out that almost 1/3 of these useful plants are conserved in our Millennium Seed Bank collection, which also it means that we are not only conserving a lot of wild species, but also the associated ecosystem services that are linked to these species. We also look in this publication at the different biomes where the species are coming from. You see in this picture a lot of the biomes are within the dryland and semi-dryland region of the world. And this is also because initially our Millennium Seed Bank project were focusing in this area. And this is also because a lot of the orthodox species, which are the one that you can dry and store in a seed banks, are also coming from this area. So of course, there is less representance of species from more the tropics, more from humid area, where also there are more recalcitrant species. So those ones that they can't be dry and conserved. And for this, we will need some alternative methods. In these slides, we look at the useful plants species conserved the Millennium Seed Bank based by looking at the categories of use. So with the arrow, they are the food plants. So of these around 30,000 useful plants that are conserved in the Millennium Seed Bank, we found out that almost 3,000 species are important for food. And then 79 of these species are from 94 crop genera, and that are captured by over 10,000 accession from 116 countries, as you can see here. We have the most common use categories: medicinal, followed by environmental, material, and human food plants. And here you can see also that the accessions, they follow a similar order. As I mentioned earlier, some of the species, the one that they are more likely to be recalcitrants, are less, they're not represented here. And this is why some of the species that are useful, they're not conserving our seed bank. These are also called exceptional plant species, as you can see in this graph. And that's for this reason, with these slides, we are really urging the importance also to think about these exceptional plant species, and also to think about the alternative methods like cryopreservation that they are needed for the preservation of these species. I'm now going to give you a more specific example about our project in Colombia, where for the last few years we have been working together with the Humboldt Institute in Colombia and many other organizations and colleagues, and in particularly with my former colleague Mauricio Diaz-Granado from Colombia, Carolina Castellanos, and Felipe Garcias from the Humboldt. And what we have done as part of this project is really to compile all the information on the useful plants and fungi of Colombia. And this really to go in line with the objective of the government to transform and boosting the bioeconomy of Colombia. So this project objective was really very much understanding the Colombia's useful plants and fungi, with to improve the people livelihoods and thinking about reducing inequality and gender gap by boosting the bioeconomy through the sustainable use of the biodiversity. Over the last few years, there's been a lot of products. A lot of researchers were involved here. Almost 120 researchers were part of this project, and other institutions in several ways. They contributed to the project that we have developed. And also this project was funded with the British government funds matching Colombian funds. So it was part of the bilateral relationship between the British government and Colombia. After combining all this rich biodiversity, Colombia is one of the mega diverse countries in terms of biodiversity, but also, of course, in terms of useful plants. We compiled information, and now all this information is available through the Call Plant, ecology. That there are two portals that have been generated in order to share all this information. For example, if you're looking for a specific useful plant by the scientific name of the common name, you can really log into the portals, and also if you want to find out, for example, all the food plants of Colombia, you can access the portals and run the queries. But at the same time, we developed another portal that was more designed, thinking about using the resources to improve the people's livelihoods. And this platform is called the Red Ingredientes Naturales de Colombia. And it's a platform that allows, for example, the producers, so where the raw material is, to connect the source of the plant material with the consumers. So it's really supporting the value chain of natural ingredients of Colombia. And this platform now is hosted by the Humboldt Institute. So there will be, of course, more work in the future linked to this platform. And one of the major products as well was the two catalogs of the useful plants of Colombia and the catalog of fungi of Colombia that came up 1 year ago, which really combine a lot of information, but also a lot of the analysis that were carried out on the useful plants of the Colombia, like, for example, this one on the diversity of Colombia wild edible plants, where we look at the distribution of the wild edible plants in Colombia and how many species they're considered edible. As you can see here, almost 4,000 plant species are considered edible in Colombia. And the department, for example, of Antioquia and Cundinamarca were found to be the richest in terms of edible plants. So a little bit of flavor to the work. Here you can see the big diversity of Passiflora species that there are in Colombia. And the Passiflora genus was actually found to be the one with the highest number of species that we have studied. And of course, this link to all the fruits from the different species, that some of which are already available at the national level on some local markets. But of course, there is much more that could be done in this area of the passion fruits of Colombia. Another species is the guaymaro. This species is also known as Ramon, for example, in Mexico, so it's not only found in Colombia. And yes, it is the brand nut in English. And this word comes out from the fact that the seeds are green. And then you can produce a flour, and then from there you can bake different products. So this is really also a species which has a lot of potential in terms of food products that can derive from the species. As part of this project, we also work with the chefs in Colombia, and try to promote the natural ingredients of Colombia, and bringing the natural ingredients of Colombia from the local level to really to the dishes in the restaurants. So this really was a very effective way to promote the natural ingredients and the food products at the local level, and bringing them in important and famous restaurants like the one that you can see in these pictures. To conclude, here we have there is a video that I'm not going to show at this stage, but these are the links, and understand the links will be shared separately by the team. But this is like a short video showing how really it's important to document and to make available, make accessible all the information on the useful plants and fungi of Colombia, and how this information can really benefit not only people at the local level to improve local livelihoods, but also can really improve the bioeconomy of Colombia, that really where biodiversity is like a competitive advantage in the economy of Colombia. So let's now move to more practical example linked to our work in the Millennium Seed Bank. A couple of years ago, we developed this framework. So we started looking at seeds as natural capital and as seeds as assets for nature-based solutions. In fact, there is a lot. There are a lot of conversation nowadays around nature-based solutions, and actually in this paper we look at the importance of seeds and the role of seeds in developing nature-based solutions. As seeds not only have an existence value, which really allows the regeneration of species, so biological importance, but also seeds have direct or indirect use value. So, for example, directly through the food they provide to humans, indirectly all the plant products that are derived from the seeds. And also there is a option value that is very important, because we still don't know all the uses of plants, and that's why research is very important, not only to document the uses at the local level through ethnobotanical surveys, and where is also the work of Q very important in terms of documenting all this knowledge, but also all these value that, for example, potential value that is in the collections. And in this sense, the Millennium Seed Bank collection useful plants really, again, is an asset for developing a solution to tackle global challenges. So when at the Millennium Seed Bank, we started really to move from the seed conservation to use. Here I would like to mention two projects, the Useful Plant project that we carry out in Botswana, Kenya, Mali, South Africa, and Mexico. We started in 2007. Where we started working with a partner. Initially, they were involved only on the sort of collecting of the seeds and for the conservation in country, duplication here. And then with our partner, we started to work with the local communities and also to select the species that were more important for the local communities, for example, for food, medicine, and so on. But at the same time, we started to carry out research that was tackling local issues and the need to have these local species, indigenous species, nearby the communities. So we work with the local communities, and here also in the phase of propagating the species, we help them basically improving the local facility for the propagation of the species. And then we look at potential, for opportunities really through plants, seeds and seedlings and plant products to improve the livelihood of the local communities. And a lot of the species had a lot of detailed studies, and 110 they were really published in this book that I have here, that Yanni mentioned earlier, where Plants for a Sustainable Future, where we compile really all the information, the taxonomic information on the seeds, information on the propagation and the uses of the species and commercialization of the species, really to support agroforestry project or development projects. One of the more recent projects that follow this framework is the Restoring the Traditional Mediterranean Diet project. And this project has been developed together with our collaborators from NARC in Jordan and the Shuf Biosphere Reserve in Lebanon. So this project will look at the restoration of the Mediterranean diet through the conservation of the wild edible plants. So one part of this project look initially at the available literature on the edible plants, but then we carry out ethnobotanical surveys like the one that you can see in this picture, and in particular leafy vegetables that are still very important at the local level, and they are most of them they are still collected from the wild, and they represent an important source of food for the local people, and they're implemented and used in a lot of traditional dishes. We have focused so far our work on the akub, that is considered a delicatessen in the Eastern Mediterranean area. And the akub is basically using a lot of the traditional dishes and collecting, is a seasonal species, so it's collecting over a very short period. And also it's quite spiny, so that's why you can see here the local corrector using glass. And mainly what is the immature inflorescence of the akub. So the work that we have been doing specifically on the akub was, of course, conserving the akub, Gundalia tourniforti, in the seedbed, but also in country. But also we carry out seed germination studies here at the Millennium Seed Bank to inform the propagation of the species that was found to be quite complicated in terms of breaking the dormancy that this species has. And so here, this is a publication that came up a few years ago about the Gundalia tourniforti, the akub, where we're really looking at the morphological characteristics of the seeds and also at the constraints that the seeds had for the germination, and therefore the cultivation of this species. And why have we done this? Well, at the local level, the project really aims to link up with the work that is carried out by our collaborators on restoring the traditional abundant stone terraces in Lebanon and Jordan. Here you can see them in the picture, and really start to introduce wild edible plants into the landscape. So it's really a restoration of the agri-food system with some new species that they come from the wild, some wild edible plants. And so this is part of the work that is going on at the moment, and of course that could be expanded, but at the moment we're really focusing on a few species. At the same time, we also work together with our colleagues here at Kew on the phytochemical analysis of the species. And here you can see the results from one of the species, Gundalia tourniforti, where there was an analysis of the amino acid content, the protein content, in order to really look at the potential health benefit of the species. But at the same time, this information is very important to promote the species. And again, here I'm showing you some products that are already marketed in the Schuf Biosphere Reserve by our collaborator there. And basically the information or the nutritional content is really added to the information and the promotion of the wild edible plants and how important these are from a health point of view. So this was the work in the Mediterranean region, and my last case study that I want to share with you is our work from Mexico. This is done together with a lot of collaborators in Mexico from the UNAM, the National Autonomous University of Mexico. We are working very closely with an NGO, Pro Natura Veracruz, and also a research organization mainly focusing on forestry that is in ECOL in Mexico and our colleagues there. So I particularly would like to share the work in Mexico because it's really Mexico is one of our oldest collaborators in the Millennium Seed Bank. We started working with them in 2002 through an access and benefit sharing agreement. And then since then, we have been conserving around 2,000 plant species. And considering that Mexico is really a huge country, this has been a lot of effort by our collaborators and colleagues here at Kew. Since 2015, we have started focusing our effort on the conservation of trees of Mexico. to really support reforestation efforts. Here I'm not going into the details, but here are some of the projects that we have carried out since 2015 from different sources of funds, some governmental funds, some philanthropic funds, and so on. And in these slides, I'm summarizing the framework under which we have been developing our work in Mexico, linking the seed conservation in the bank with the in situ conservation and the use at the local level. So an important part of our work has been the targeting, then of course the seed collecting, the part of seed banking, the part of propagation of the trees. And now I'm going through each of these steps with you in the next slides to show what the work has been done in each step. So in terms of targeting, when we started this work, we looked for a list of trees of Mexico, and actually we found out that there was a lot of scattered information in a lot of publications, and we had to do the first work of bringing all this information together to come up with a comprehensive database and catalog on native trees of Mexico, with information on the species diversity, the geographic distribution, the human uses, and the conservation. So through this work, we've been able to put together a list of almost 3,000 native tree species belonging to 612 genera and 128 families. Where Fabaceae was the most representative family, and Quercus the most representative genus. We look also at the endemism of the tree species. We found that 44% of these species are endemic to the country, so only occurring in Mexico. And also we look at the traditional uses. And by considering all this information, we came up with the hotspot of biodiversity for tree conservation in Mexico, that you can see here in this map, and with the area of Veracruz and Chiapas as being one of the main hotspots for the conservation of trees in Mexico. So let's move along the line of this framework. So once the targeting has been accomplished in terms of areas and species, we started to collect the seeds in the field with our collaborators from UNAM. We process the seeds, and we're still actually doing this work, and then we conserve them in the seed bank in country, and when possible, we duplicate them here in the Millennium Seed Bank. At the same time, we carry out all the germination experiments in order to look at the seed biology of the species and really inform the regeneration of the species, but also looking at the different temperatures that seeds can germinate. And in this way, we really understand which one they can withstand better future increase of temperature in the future. So really looking very much at the seed germination under future climatic changes. And this information is very important when it comes to the regeneration of the species. And here on the left side of the slide, you can see a picture of the tree nursery that we have that there is in the state of Veracruz, based at the NGO called Pro Natura Veracruz, where all this information inform the propagation of the species, but also sometimes all the way around. Sometimes even the propagation, the experience that there is at the nursery in the propagation of the species also feeds back the information to what happens in the lab. So actually, this is really an exchange of information between the lab experiments and also what happened in the tree nursery for the propagation of the species. And then, as part of this work, we also carrying out reforestation trials. So after the species are propagated, we are also following what happened in situ. And here we're very much working with the within ECOL, that is Research Institute in Veracruz, and with them we are really looking at the plant growth of the different species, but also the survival rates of the species, in order really to inform again, together with the seed biology reforestation program. One important component of our work is also really, again, working with the local communities, and we do very much that through our collaborator from Pro Natura Veracruz, the NGO. And together with them, we really select the species, but also we carry out training events. And also at the same time, these events are used also for marketing species, native species, to support the reforestation. As an example of this work with the local community, I would like to guide you through one of our latest projects that is about enhancing carbon sequestration and improving the livelihoods in shade-grown coffee plantation in the state of Veracruz, where basically we started working with coffee producers in the area. In fact, in the state of Veracruz, not only is very important as it contains one of the last few remaining patches of the tropical mountain forest, but also is very important economically for the production of coffee that represent one of the main sources of income for the local communities. So through this project, we started a strategic selection of the native tree species, considering the capacity to capture carbon. So really looking at which species have a higher capacity to capture carbon. And this is because, of course, this is linked, of course, with the climate change mitigation, as the species that have a higher capacity to capture carbon, they also really help us also to mitigate climate change. But also we look at the conservation status of the species as one second criteria that we consider in the selection of the species. We look at the native distribution of the species. And so we focus on the one that they are from the tropical mountain forest of Veracruz, and originally a native of the state of Veracruz. But also we really consulted the species together with the local communities, and the uses that we consider in terms of food plants or food trees or medicinal trees incorporated also the knowledge of the local community, that also they have other categories that they were interested in. After that, after we've done the selection of the species, we started to collect the seeds again. So as part of the framework, we are conserving the one that they are orthodox in the seed bank in Mexico and here in the Millennium Seed Bank. But also we are carrying out a lot of research on the seed germination under different climatic change scenarios, in order really to understand which species also they are the most resilient in terms of climatic changes, together of being have a high capacity for storing carbon. And then the information is also informing again the regeneration of the species, their propagation, and at the moment we are setting up reforestation trials in order to monitor these native tree species that are used as shade by the coffee producers, in order to understand also their performance in the coffee plantation, and also to understand interaction, and also to really understand if there are any other kind of impact, positive or negative, from this work. We have a lot of work around producing information out of this work, and we are working with the communication team to help really sharing all this information. And as part of our selection process that is summarized here, so the species selection process, as you can see here, we started from that initial list of 3 species at the national level, and then we narrow it down with the species that really they're being selected and prioritized by the local communities. We apply a gender equality and social inclusion approach. So we had workshops where also we divided men and women in order to understand really also the preferences based on gender of the species. And all this information about that has been produced so far, as I said, we have a web page for the project that is hosted by ProNatura Veracruz with different videos that are like tutorials how we really went through the process of selection of the species. So you are welcome to visit the website, but also we have produced a manual that really guide the practitioner through the selection of the species and also all the conservation and the propagation activities and use in the coffee plantations. And I'm going here to share with you one of the leaflets that we have produced. The area where we're working, we have also a cropware relative of the commercial avocado that we all know, that is called the chinini. And this cropware relative is not only a cropware relative, so a source of a gene source, but is actually used and commercialized at the local level. So it's a wild avocado that is really appreciated by the local communities, but it has the benefit that also it has a high capacity to store carbon. Is really appreciated by the local communities, and at the same time can generate income for the local communities. So when we talk about incrementing really and supporting the local communities, also to look at species that they have other uses and potential other products that can really help the local economy of the coffee producers. Here in the next picture, we have 2 of our coffee producers. We have Dueña Lilia Paez and Don Ramon Itza, that they're really being very active through our project and also full of ideas. And we are really working with them closely together also with over other 30 coffee producers from this area. So to really summarize the impact of the coffee project that we have in the state of Veracruz, really here what we are looking into it is to have impacts at different levels. So really impact at the research level by developing this methodology that we are in the process also of improving, and we are now preparing a manuscript for publication in order really to share it with the wider scientific communities and hopefully generate a discussion and perhaps really build on knowledge in the selection of the species that they have these multiple objectives. But also there is the environmental benefit in terms of the species being able to capture carbon. The benefit as a scientist, as conservationist, to really conserve these species, both ex situ and in situ, and ensure their availability for future generation. And then we have the social economic component, because at the end of the day, this work really needs to support the local producers. In terms of carbon capture, maybe of course it's not a short-term impact, it's a long-term impact, but at the same time we are really also looking at other ways to generate a short-term impact. So for example, looking at the access for smallholder farmer to the carbon market, and that of course there are a lot of funds there, but it's not easy most of the time for a small producer to access these carbon markets. And at the same time, we're looking into the other products that can really generate income for the local community through, for example, the chenini, the crop relative of the avocado, and finally, ecotourism activity link really to the activities around in the coffee plantations and so on. And for this, we are really in the process of hiring and marketing, especially that to help us to develop these opportunities for the local producers. So in this way, they can have a short-term impact and benefit out of the project. So I finish now here with my case studies, and I put together some concluding remarks to end the presentation. I hope through my presentation, I really demonstrate how important is plant diversity, along with the wealth of the traditional knowledge about the uses and the practices at the local level, and how all this knowledge together with this diversity of species is still largely an untapped resource that can really help to develop a sustainable future. And seeds represent the main assets for nature-based solution, and they can really help us to enhance the sustainable use of plants in natural conservation, but at the same time really to support a sustainable development model. Seed banking, as you can see, is an important tool for the conservation of useful plants. However, it's important really to link the conservation with the use of the useful plants, but at the same time also all the research and the characterization of these really incredible source of material, but also really with a lot of potential uses and the uses that we already know. The importance of involving local communities. I'm sure a lot of experts has experience working with local community, and of course when it comes to plant conservation, also seed conservation, it's very important to keep involving the local communities, raising awareness of the benefit of the native local plants in order really to promote the conservation of wild edible plants, not only for the conservation side, but also in terms of really supporting their livelihoods. And finally, really developing marketing options and sustainable value chain. And for this, really, we need somehow really an integrated approach, working with different experts, like I show in the coffee project that we have, really bringing all the different expertise, different scientists, but also people that really on the ground can really help and support the livelihoods of local communities. So with these concluding remarks, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I will be open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tiziana. That was fascinating to see the number of activities that you do in the Manila City Back, reaching out to users, from looking at target areas all the way to considering even ecotourism. I had a question myself real quick. What is the time frame of that Mexican project on coffee? How many years are we talking from the time you did the target to all the way to the end? Yeah.
Yeah, the coffee project really fits within a wider program, and that's why I really wanted to show you also the wider program, because the coffee project itself really we started 1 year ago, so it's really a recent project. But what we did is really to bring in all our expertise from the seed conservation experience that we had before, and also really linking up with the work on the ground that is carried out mainly by the NGO Pro Natura Veracruz. So bringing really the science into the practical work and back.
Yes.
And so at the end is a very new project, and we are really keen also to publish this methodology, because we see this as a starting point for improvement in the future, and we are now in the process of doing our second phase of the project and bringing all this expertise, social economic consultants and marketing consultants, really to complement our skills that as a scientist from the biological sciences we normally don't have.
So we have some questions and comments in the crowd, so I'll just read those to you.
Yeah.
For your experience with chefs, for example, this is about impact. How do you monitor impact? What is the evidence of impact? For example, initiating a market or a value chain that can live on its own in the future. Is there any way that you can monitor what impact you have and if it actually did live on?
Yeah, we actually ourselves, and this was mainly in the project in Colombia. The project has finished, and this is really the issue of many projects, that they don't give you funds to monitor the impact after the projects they finish. But definitely, I mean, what we are aware, of course, that some of the species that we promoted through our project are still used in the restaurants, for example, in Cartagena or Bogota. But again, we haven't really measured the impact, but they became part of the menu. So for us, really, I think we consider that a success, and I think probably we consider it more like a test. And yes, it can happen if you get really important chefs to work with you, and really also to make dishes that are more appealing, for example, for restaurants. That's really how you can really help and promote the use of the species, and really at the same time help this value chain. But of course, you need, again, I'm sure this question also thinking about the supply, and that's why this is the part probably that need more work, because in order to ensure a constant supply, you really need to work also more in terms of cultivation of the species and also the marketing and so on.
Exactly. Yeah. So this next question has to do with terminology, and it was in the Mediterranean part where you were explaining about Mediterranean diets. The question is, why use the term restore? And perhaps a better term would be reinvent or revitalize the Mediterranean diet to reflect socioeconomic and political change that interacts with dietary change.
I think that's a very good suggestion. So thank you for that. I actually like the word revitalize. When we start thinking about restoring, and that was at the beginning of our project, it was really to try really to restore, because although there are still, there are still a lot of areas where they're harvesting species from the wild, but somehow a lot when you go more to urban areas, and bigger the urban areas are, somehow this knowledge seems to decrease. So that's why, I think in order to get, especially people from urban areas, to get more interested in the local products, in the local species, that's really what you need to promote. Something that is already there, and somehow you have to restore it, and bring it from the local more to the national level. But I think revitalize is a good term, and in fact, if we think about the abandoned terraces, it's not really to restore as exactly was before. It's really somehow to innovate them with new plants and new wild edible plants, basically, that we found through our work that are still there, used and collected actually from the wild.
Wonderful. Here's another very interesting question, and I think it's pertinent to all gene banks. You said that you had over 100 collaborators, and at times you have to sign contracts and agreements with them. Is having an access and benefit sharing agreement with a particular country often a challenge for you at Millennial Seed Bank?
It is. In fact, as part of our work at the Millennium Seed Bank here, a lot of effort is really goes in access and benefit sharing agreement, in developing these agreements. And in fact, in some countries, they really see more the benefit of the collaboration, but with some countries, actually, we haven't been able to work. And that's why when I show also the distribution of the collection of useful plants, at the global level, what happened is that there are some gaps, and these gaps sometimes, there are these gaps because maybe there are less useful plants in that area, or because it's more tropical areas. But some of the gaps is really because we haven't been able to work under an access and benefit sharing agreement with our collaborators, and therefore we haven't been able to really conserve these species.
Okay. We have two comments, both congratulating you. Dear Tiziana, very impressive work. I wish to work together further on desert useful plants in the future. So perhaps that person can reach out to you specifically on that topic. And then again, from Victor, very interesting approach taken in Mexico. Thank you for sharing. CIMMYT can learn with respect to crop and cropping system diversification and multi-benefit accounting. So yes, I mean, that is also kind of a roadmap for international centers to see what you have done and how far you've gone. Again, thank you for your presentation and great work you're doing. For country or gene bank that wishes to have the catalog, which you mentioned, of important plants, what are the suggested areas of focus to achieve this? So I'm thinking is they want to create a catalog like the one you created. And what are the suggested areas of focus? Well, like what would be their roadmap if they were to create a catalog such as the one that you presented? Where would they even start? What would be the first 3 steps that they would need to take to be able to create a catalog like that? Yeah, well, we have produced a catalog, a checklist actually of useful plants, and this is available. There is the list that has been published, and we are actually working in this moment to update that list. And so we hope to have an updated list, hopefully by next year. So again, the work hasn't finished. There are probably many more species out there that are useful at the local level, but also that we don't know. And that's why also the research and innovation and the studies on the biochemistry of the species is very important here, really. A lot of the species might have properties that we still don't know. And normally a lot of the uses are linked to the needs at the local level. So that's why, of course, when we talk about useful plants, are species that are used at the local level by people for specific issues or problems or needs, basically. So, but we welcome collaboration in this sense. Also, all the information about the useful plants of Fungo Colombia is available. So again, these are all data, and I understand. Yeah, it's important to work together on this compilation, these catalogs, because again, there are a lot more information out there that can really contribute to these catalogs. It's not just really making a list, but it's also to bringing together all this knowledge that is out there, sometimes also in the grey literature, that really should be compiled together for the benefit of the humanity, really, and to tackle all these global challenges out there. Yeah, exactly. We will take two more questions, and the first one is, many of the national gene banks are looking into doing something what you're doing, reaching out to the user with several purposes. How can such examples, like the ones that you showed, be scaled up in national gene banks or in other countries? Where would they start? How would they reach out? I mean, they're a bank that doesn't distribute much. They're a bank that has not had that linkage that you have to farmers and users and reforestation groups and so forth. So how would they start? How do you see this working if they're going to start in other countries? Where would they start? Yeah, well, in our case, in my case, when I started the useful plant project, for example, that is the first time where we really move substantially from the conservation to the use. We were already working with collaborators, and somehow I think to have these links with collaborators, we need to capitalize on that. And sometimes, as international organization, of course, it's not easy to reach the local level, farmers, local people, and that's why you really need to work with the
with the national organization, even local organization, that they have these contacts. For example, for the coffee producer, these were not our contacts. These were really contacts that were facilitated by our NGO working with us. So really, they really welcome us in their network, and together really we develop a way to reach the coffee producers, but at the same time really with our science, we really it's very important that we just don't produce science for them, but we really take the science to them. Right. Because otherwise we'll end up in scientific paper, and in this way again there will be a wall between what we do as a scientist and what happens at the local level.
Yeah, thank you. And I think for the last question, coffee as a non-orthodox seed, that's the question pertains to that. Have you ever tried to keep coffee seeds in cold storage conditions, and have you been successful?
We here in the Millennium Seed Bank, we actually haven't worked on coffee, but because especially here in the Millennium Seed Bank, we're focusing on wild species. So I think here probably that's the kind of collaboration we should do more with the crop gene banks. But definitely what we are working on is on the diversity of the other crop variety of the main species of coffee that are there. So in that sense, we're studying them, but we haven't tried to cryopreserve them, for example. So this is probably a potential work for the future, a collaboratory project.
Very challenging work, for
yes,
sure.
Absolutely.
Well, with that, it's 9 o'clock where I am, probably 3 p.m. where you are. We want to thank you for your attendance and hope to see you next month. We have work from a presentation from IPK on phenotyping accession. So we hope to see you then. And Tiziana, so thankful for this wonderful and inspiring presentation. It really is inspiring to see all the work that you have done and that we could also do with the gene bank. So thank you so much for putting the time into preparing such a wonderful presentation. The last words for you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yanni. It's been a pleasure, and also to get to know you. So it was really great opportunity for me and my colleague to share this work. So please get in touch if you are interested in some of the information that I showed today, but also if you're interested in future collaboration, because there's still a lot of work to do out there in order, and if we don't hurry up to conserve species, we lose them. So that's very important that all of us work together in a collaborative way. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for your attention.
Thanks, everybody. See you next month.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.